Hi, folks. So, welcome to my home setup. It's a little bit different than my setup at work, but we're all here, and we're all gonna get through this, and we're all gonna see what we can do in responding to all these changes. This is what we do best here in ISBIT. It turns out that this sort of leads into this presentation on systems philosophy. Unfortunately, and rather than press the cough button because it's going to happen all the time. In my lovely home, here I am in my lovely finished basement where my desk is, completely surrounded by a whole bunch of lovely trees. They're all green and they're all blossoming. It's a beautiful spring, and my hay fever is going crazy. So I apologize for coughing and hacking through this, but we'll get through it. But what I want to do is launch this off and start talking about what was actually chapter 1 of the textbook, or 1 of the book, Systems Philosophy. Let me push a few buttons here and check this technology. So yeah, Systems Philosophy is the name of this first chapter. I'm going to try to use this new presentation software I have here. Of course, it's systems thinking, managing chaos and complexity. You could definitely say that we're in sort of a chaotic situation right now, at least insofar as chaos is not predictable or unpredictable, and that's sort of where we're at now. But we still need to manage and get through and stay safe. And for those people who own businesses and work in businesses, need to make sure that things are going well. So this is not in the textbook. Obviously, the textbook does not anticipate a large pandemic like what we're going through now, but I can imagine there's going to be lots and lots of business books in the future that are going to have chapters on what we're going through right now. So yeah, platform for designing business architecture. The idea is that if we design the system properly, the system itself will weather large changes. Again, it's hard to say that this particular system that we're working with now was designed to handle this large of a pandemic. We keep on hearing the officials on TV that while we have the CDC and we have a whole bunch of infectious disease organizations and both at the state level, local level, and the federal level, that this level of response wasn't really built into the system. So the system's trying to adapt in real time, and that's what happens when we experiment in real time. Sometimes we get things right, sometimes we get things wrong, but the idea is that we keep on changing rather than just sitting by and watching things fall apart. Our author is Jamshid Gerdadaji. I've never met Professor Gerdadaji, who works actually as a professor down at the University of Pennsylvania, right here in Philadelphia. I should probably put it on my bucket list to just walk down Broad Street and say hi to him, because I've been using his book for quite some time, and I'm a big fan. Obviously, I have to wait till we all reopen, but we'll take care of that. And his side hustle, his side business is called the Institute for Interactive Management. So let me push the buttons here. As I mentioned in class, this is not the copy of the book that I have in class. It has a different cover, different color as well. This cover is blue, obviously, but it's the 3rd edition of the book. If you happen to have any of the editions, or if you happen to have brought it back home from school, it's a good book to take a look at. It doesn't read like a murder mystery, but I find that it's useful, and that a lot of the things that we've been talking about so far in this semester are exactly what the book has been talking about. So once you learn how to speak systems, and we have been all semester, I think it's nice and comforting that you can read a business book like this and really understand what the author is saying. So let's pop in here and see what's happening. So yeah, so this chapter 1, part 1, systems philosophy. We've been talking about philosophy for quite a long time. I'm sitting in my chair, but I could probably go up on one foot and do the old philosophical stance, because there's a lot of philosophy inside of this. The name of the devil. Again, it's just a very popular phrase to say, hey, what is deviling you? What is the devilish problem? Why isn't your system working just perfectly? The idea is that things change. So we could be talking about any system like Salle, an educational system where things have definitely changed because of the corona pandemic. But also things change, and they change pretty often. The idea that your system, your business, has been designed to be perfectly efficient and that nothing will ever change is sort of a huge fallacy that some business people who are not thinking in systems, unfortunately, fall prey to that. Thankfully, because we sort of rearranged some things because LaSalle had chosen to have their spring break so late in the semester. Typically, we would play the beer game after we get back from spring break, but we actually moved it beforehand. So we've had, as a class, we've had the experience of playing the beer game, and we've seen a system. It was a system. It may not be a very awesome system, but it was a system that was not designed very well to even deliver beer, let alone anything else. So it was by design. It was meant to be a system that had a lot of faults, and it was there so that we could comment on all of those faults, and then make sure that we don't incorporate those faults into our other systems. So that's sort of what this particular chapter of the book is looking at is what can we do that are sort of common pitfalls for all businesses that are just going around doing their business and doing their jobs, and then having things fall apart. So let me grab this guy here. So chapter 1 of the textbook is indeed called How the Game is Evolving, and the author likes to use the term evolving. We have a large biological living systems component in ISBIT, so we're very comfortable with using the word evolving as well, and definitely things are evolving. The playing field evolves. We like to use this word game. The playing field of where the business is doing its business. Customers change, technology changes, and social constructs change. So the idea is to take a look at this and see how things evolve and how things change over time. We're definitely not static. Things don't change. If they changed, if we didn't change, then we could spend all of our time making the world's perfect system, sort of like making the world's perfect stack of Jenga bricks. But then, of course, as soon as something would change or wiggle, it would fall over. So that would be a bad thing. So it turns out that Jamshed, the author, happens to like certain numbers, and I like him maybe because of that. Because of I'm a 5 guy. I like 5s. I like 3s. I like odd numbers. But this first idea is that in his chapter 1, he brings up 5 things that we should take a look at. It's not the only 5. It's not like there's a natural rule that there's only 5. He just happens to bring up 5. The first one is imitation, and we're going to take a look at these guys in sequence one at a time. Imitation, inside that, we'll see what that guy is. And then 2, inertia, what happens when businesses gain inertia. Obviously, inertia is a physics term. We talked a little bit about inertia last semester for those of you who were in 110. Or 112 rather. Sub-optimization is another topic that we'll be talking about. Change of the game. We're talking about the game evolving in the first place, so sometimes there are things that completely change the game. And then the last one is shift of paradigm, and paradigm is a perfectly harmless word, but sometimes people, especially in business and people who write business books, will use the word paradigm and paradigm shift often, and it turns into just a word salad of some meaningless words, but it definitely does have some meaning. We're going to take a look at. So we're going to look at these 5 different things that are sort of always out there for a business to wrestle with and be concerned with. And the idea of our author is that if you design a business that sort of keeps these 5 sort of pitfalls in mind, they don't necessarily have to be pitfalls. They're not negatives, and they don't come up and smack your business. It's just that the business environment and businesses constantly evolve. And these are 5 things to look at as how it's going to be evolving almost on a daily basis. So let's see if we can take a look at this. I'm still learning how to navigate this. So imitation, obviously it's an English word. Imitation just means that somebody's imitating somewhere else. We have comedians who like to imitate folks and use their words and their mannerisms. We have things like imitation butter. We have imitation crab. In this case, we're talking about a second business, another business imitating or making a product that imitates your product. So yeah, competitive advantage is a distinction. One of the ways that your business can get ahead is that your product is slightly different and perhaps slightly better, at least better in the eyes of the people who are going to be buying it. Obviously, you can pick any industry, whether it's takeout pizza or it's cell phones or it's laptops or it's computers. We don't just have one company making all of them. Some of them can have pretty large market shares, but mostly we have lots of competition. and different customers will like different products for different reasons. Of course, that's so competitive advantage is what that's called. That's a distinction that allows a business to thrive. So one of the examples in the textbook, case study that this author and his co-workers actually consulted on was there was an American product that costs 40% more than its nearest competitor. So it just so happens that the competitor was Japanese. It's an automobile product. It's actually Caterpillar. It's actually a bulldozer. And it turns out that the Japanese imitation product, as you're calling it, or will only cost 40% as much as the Caterpillar version. And sometimes imitation means, oh my gosh, it's not real. It's not made out of the correct parts, or it's going to fail. In this case, we just mean that another product is imitating what your product does. So again, back to cell phones, it has a certain size, it has a certain battery that lasts a certain time, it has icons on the screen. The whenever you pick up a phone, whether you pick up an iOS phone or an Android phone, apart from the actual particulars, you can probably just pick it up and start using it right away because they are imitating each other's system. So in this case, we don't mean imitation is bad. Like, oh, look at that cardboard house. It's just an imitation of a real house. We actually mean that this product really does what it's supposed to do, but it just so happens that it's called an imitation product because the particular company, the Japanese competitor, did not invent the bulldozer, but they happen to have one that looks exactly like the ones that Caterpillar is selling. So again, let me grab my mouse here and click on here. I can learn how to use this. So what happens was they went off and they said, how in the world is this Japanese imitation company able to sell a bulldozer that works for only 40% the price? And the idea was, wow, they must be selling it under cost, or there must be foregoing profit, or they really are using cheap products. It turns out that was not the case in any of those. The products, the materials were just as appropriate. They were just as sturdy. They were just as strong. But they discovered that the competitor's product used 40% less stuff. It used less bolts and less steel and less parts, and it made it less expensive because there was less parts to be assembled. And it turns out that they learned that the American company, the Caterpillar, had been making large, earth-moving bulldozers for a while. And every time somebody had a great idea and said, hey, what if we make this part a little stronger, or what if we go ahead and design this a little bit different, or add some horsepower, what they did was they just bolted on these upgrades. And by bolting on the upgrades, they had the original bulldozer, and then they kept on bolting on upgrades. By the time they were done, the bulldozer was 40% more parts and 40% more expensive. Where in the case of the Japanese product, what they did was they said, hey, this is a great product. We think we can get into this market. We're not going to break any patents or designs, because we're not going to just build what they build. What we're going to do is we're going to look at all the innovations they made and said, hey, this is great, but rather than bolting everything on, what if we started from scratch? What if we started from a brand new invention and then just had it, as a goal, had it do, and had it, gave it all the parameters, gave it all the specifications, gave it all the strength that the other bulldozer did. Let's just have it do it from the beginning. We don't have to build it and then build it again, almost half again, with a 40% above. So that's what happened with the bulldozer. So here's a picture of a typical Caterpillar bulldozer. Yeah, they're construction orange. Yes, it has all the right parts. It has a big blade up here, a big shovel up front to push dirt. It has 2 tracks. It has a cab that's enclosed with air conditioning and the like, and it has some hydraulic lifting arms. You can't really tell. I didn't particularly look for the exact imitation bulldozer that was mentioned inside this book. I just grabbed a picture of it. Here is a picture of a competing bulldozer from Asia. They sort of look the same, and in fact, we do this back and forth. We can see that they, at a first pick, they sort of look similar. Obviously, there's a different color as far as the cab and the like. But yeah, two treads, a single shovel out front, 2 arms, a single stack for the exhaust. They seem to have all of the appropriate components, but it turns out that the competitor's bulldozer is 40% less for the reasons we mentioned. So it turns out that the competitor used the original designer's innovations of making it better, But rather than bolting on the new things, they went ahead and they just started from scratch. They had to tear down, metaphorically speaking, they tore down the original design and then they built it back up from scratch. So again, the lesson learned is start from scratch rather than patch. I tried to make a little sing-songy thing here, and of course this is referring to our imitation. A little bit of an ISBIT story, rather than, and this is the accurate story, rather than saying our major integrated science, business, and technology program, it did not start out of another department. It is true that the physics major at LaSalle was retired. We just didn't have enough students who were choosing physics at LaSalle. So it turned out that LaSalle's scientists, or the science departments, had extra capacity to hold another department. And they said, well, what are we going to make? And they said, well, let's try this this integrated program, and of course we named it ISBIT. But it wasn't as if we took physics and then on top of physics built the ISBIT program. We started literally from scratch. We started with a white sheet of paper and said, okay, what is our new major going to look like? So I really identify with this first chapter because we did the exact same thing, inside building ISBIT.